What group are we?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Giselle Sandoval.
I'm Sarah Medrano.
I'm Andrew Henriquez.
Hi, I'm Jordan.
Okay, we're gonna be discussing the short reflection. So the first question was, what do we learn of the younger family and their relationship with each other? I put that they live in like a apartment, a small apartment. They have 5 people living in the apartment, and there's obviously a lot of. I mean, I guess it makes sense. They're living in a small apartment. There's a lot of arguing going around. So that just kind of shows a little bit more about the relationship and how, like, what a stressful situation that could be. What did you guys think?
Yeah, I think they're obviously close because they're family, but I think like how you said about the apartment, how they're living all like together, they always bump heads. Like a normal family, but their issues are obviously different nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they have a good bond with each other, although they may argue. I'd say they have a pretty good bond.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking they do have a good bond, like with Ruth and her son. They they like argue, but they also are able to be kind to each other. But I was thinking that Walter seems kind of like an outlier. He seems very hostile towards
Mm-hmm.
everyone and very like self-centered.
It seems like so Travis is just the youngest, so he doesn't really have much of a thought. He's just going to school. With the grandmother, it seems like she realizes that life could be better, and she has certain dreams that could have been fulfilled but haven't. But I think she's still happy. The wife Ruth, she's pretty happy. Mainly, it's kind of just seems like Walter. He's very unhappy. Like he has, I think, because it really affects him that he lives so poor, and that especially that his son Travis has to ask like when about how Travis needs 50 cents for the school, and they can't even afford that, and so um, things like that. But so yeah.
Yeah, like same with due to his job, he's like serving like the rich or whatever. That
Yeah.
also contributes to his anger and
Mm-hmm.
frustration.
Mm-hmm.
We can't hear you.
Sorry. The next question is, who is the play's protagonist? Is there a single protagonist? I like that you mentioned what you said about it, Jordan, about Walter, because that's who I thought the protagonist was. If
Mm-hmm.
anything, because like of his attitudes and everything, I thought he was a protagonist.
So far,
No,
what I oh, go ahead, Giselle.
oh, sorry. No, it's just I was also thinking Walter, but there's something about the mom that like how she with her family, how she's like kind of like holds her family and kind of manages them into different directions. Also,
Mm-hmm.
made me think.
I don't think there's any one protagonist. They all have their story. I was kind of thinking like at least it seems like the person who's had the most scenes or the most dialogue is Ruth because she's the first one awake, and so she wakes up Travis and Walter, and then Travis goes to school, then Walter leaves for her job, and then she's talking to Mama, and then Mama and Benita, they come in out of the rooms, but it's kind of just mainly Ruth, and then when she comes back from the hospital, but it doesn't seem like there's only one protagonist.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's one protagonist, but if I did have to choose, I would say like Ruth, just because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like there's a lot more focus on her and like her
Yeah.
attitude and how she connects to
Mm-hmm.
everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next question was, how does Act One of the play set up a conflict for the younger family? And is the conflict unique to them, or is it representative of a greater American conflict or condition?
Well, the conflict would be the money, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what sets up everything, and
Mm-hmm.
that's like where the conflict starts, and like what Walter what he wants to do with the money, what the mom's idea of what to do to for the family to help them, and obviously Benita's education that sets up everyone's like plot, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
I bet that it's a representative of the greater American conflict because, like, the overall idea of like the American system and
Hmm.
how, like you said, Giselle, how it's like basically revolved around money because
Hmm.
obviously they live in that situation.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
sorry. I was gonna say the same thing. Kind of like, yeah, it's sorry. It's the conflict is just like contentness, like feeling of
Hmm.
like different levels of how they're content with their lives. Because Benny, the sister, is like she wants to be a doctor, but she's also not like actively shooting for anything specific. While in contrast, her brother Walter is like, I need the money, I need to do
Hmm.
something for my family.
Hmm.
I need support, stuff like that.
It seems like the main conflict is the money, especially the check that Mama is getting, and like you said, Andrew, about Walter's focus on that, and it seems like Mama is very strong-willed, and she has certain ideas of what to do, and maybe the conflict will be that her children won't agree with what she has to say, especially with the end of Act One about how Ruth is thinking about getting an abortion, and Mama was like, that's not going to happen. You better tell her, Walter, that that's not going to happen. So yeah, there's these little arguments between them that could, you know, get bigger as the play goes on.
Hmm.
Yeah. The next thing was what language, whether in the dialogue spoken by the actors or in the stage directions in italics in the play, stands out as important and revealing of the play's thematic focus.
Uh, Hold on. I'm sorry. I need to see the question. Uh, it said it's the third question, right?
The fourth.
Fourth.
The fourth one. Okay.
So like the italicized is like the stage directions, right?
Yeah.
I think it's very important because it's not just like a background or anything. It's just like a setup of like how they're struggling or where they're
Mm-hmm.
living, the type of culture they're
Mm-hmm.
faced with, and I think that does like a very big part of the whole play.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because you're not only just like reading that they're struggling, but you're like seeing it through
Yeah.
their
Especially in the beginning, the stage directions and how they're describing the furniture, because they're not just saying it's old, they're saying they describe that you could tell that at one time it was nice and that it was selected, all the furniture was selected with care, but now just from the sheer number of people that have been living there, and they've worn out. So a lot of language seems kind of talking about like generational gaps, especially between like Mama and Ruth is kind of in the middle between Mama and I'd say Benitha is more like, um, I guess, liberal in her views, whereas Mama is a little more conservative. Um, because like when Benitha, she's going to school, and she talks about certain things that Mama can't understand, like when she says that she needs to express herself, and so Mama is like, I don't even know what that means, and she says, her children, like, she doesn't understand their wants and their needs. Back in her day, people were just trying to avoid lynchings, and things like that. And so for her son Walter to be talking nothing about money, and then Ruth, or pardon me, Benitha just to be talking about, I guess a little, I guess you could view it as selfishness, but more of like, I guess more feminist, because Benitha doesn't want to like just get with a man because he's rich or things like that. So there's certain language, little things here and there that you could see the generational gaps.
Yeah,
Um,
I like that you mentioned sorry.
that's all
I
right.
like that you mentioned about that mom and understanding because I feel like the italics size in the play it just like it builds up the
Mm-hmm.
tension
Mm-hmm.
and like it's more revealing of what's like
Mm-hmm.
going around. So I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was like it is pretty revealing.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing I noticed throughout the play with italics is like, I remember one line where Walter is complaining about how Ruth doesn't support him, and then he starts speaking about how women don't really support men,
Oh
and
yeah.
that because of this, that leads to the men failing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
in italics, he says like me. He's like, you need to support me, or like, what about
Mm-hmm.
me?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just like how I said earlier, more emphasis on how Walter's very self-centered and like
Mm-hmm.
his goal is to provide for his family, but it's also about like proving, I guess, to himself and to society that he can do it himself.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
The next question was what metaphors might serve to define the abstract concept of the heart of the place inhabited? So, any metaphors that you guys thought of?
The metaphor I thought of was the plant that Mama takes care of, and that kind of symbolizes um, her of her family, where it's kind of just this one thing that she really focuses on, and she doesn't have very much. They're very poor. Her taking care of the plant is like her providing for her family, but the plant is kind of like dying, and the family, it's kind of uh, how much the tension between them. The situation that they're in makes it very hard for them.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned the idea of the plant because that's what I had thought. But like, obviously, in a way of the American dream, and you mentioned that the plant was dying, how the American system is like
Uh,
fulfilling of how the American dream, well, their
mhm,
American dream is
mhm,
like dying off. You
mhm.
know.
Yeah.
Um,
Any other examples of metaphors?
No,
I
with the sorry, Jordan described about taking care of his family, of the mom taking care of the family and not having much does make a lot of sense. And how you mentioned about the American dream, I could see that, and especially at that time, where everything's just kind of failing, the
Mhm,
system's just failing them. It just does make a lot of sense.
mhm,
I think another good part with the plant metaphor though, that I want to say was like she mentions when she takes it out that it needs sunlight and that if it doesn't get sunlight, it's gonna die, and
mhm,
that could be an extended like piece of the metaphor for like how the family needs either money or like
mhm,
to like come to terms with each other.
mhm,
Otherwise,
mhm.
like this, they're gonna fail at whatever they're trying to do.
Right.
The last question was how does Hansberry's solution to Hugh's poem predict the likely direction of the plot in Act Two? So, what did you guys think about that one? The last
I,
question.
I think an allusion to Hugh's poem. Something that stuck out with me is the tension going on with the family, and especially with Mama telling Walter off about Ruth wanting to get an abortion, and then slapping Benitha about because she's the way she talks about God. And so this tension is going to come to a head, so especially in the last line of Hugh's poem, or does it explode? I was thinking about that, like I think and especially because his check is coming in, or it's already in, so you have all this tension, and then people aren't getting what they want, so I don't know, like it's setting it up for like something big's going to happen.
Def- Their kettle with boiling water, it's gonna get to a point where start like get to,
Did,
Is it my audio?
did it cut out for me?
Yeah, I cut out. I couldn't really
Oh,
hear you,
it was,
Angie.
yeah.
oh, sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I said that is their family's kind of like a boiling kettle, and that
Yeah,
eventually it's gonna start hissing and like
yeah.
making noise, and they have to deal with that.
Hmm. That's good.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also going with what Jordan said about the that last thing that you were thinking about. I also thought it was more like a foreshadowing to what's gonna happen. So it's kind of interesting.
Hmm.
Did you guys have any more ideas to that?
I think we covered it all.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think.
I think that's it.
Okay.
Bye.